delighted to have you join us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Wendy Silverman. I run a business called Peace Love Cookies locally here in Glencoe. And I started this about just over 2 years ago. It's just something that I had a passion for. I actually started my career in, just to give you some background on me, in advertising. I worked for about 15 years in advertising at different ad agencies throughout Chicago, and moved out to the suburbs in 2015, and had continued to work in advertising at that time, and then finally decided that it just really wasn't anything that I wanted to truly continue with, and I loved doing this sort of creative outlet of cookies. And so I decided to take this plunge and see if I could make cookies, if people would enjoy them as much as I do. And here I am today. I will tell you one sort of interesting tidbit is that while I do a lot of decorated sugar cookies and cakes right now, it's not at all what I intended when I first started this. And what I really thought I'd be doing was making regular kind of chocolate chip cookies and brownies and cookie trays and things like that for events, but I didn't ever expect to do these. And I thought, there's no way I could do decorated sugar cookies. I was sort of dabbling with them, but I didn't really think that I could progress too far with them. And I received so many requests for decorated sugar cookies for these like very custom, specific designs. And I just decided, let's just go with it, see what I can do. And I started saying yes to every job that was, every request that came to me for decorated sugar cookies. I just said yes, even if I wasn't sure I could do it. And I did the best I could. And it ended up being pretty much everything I was doing. And even now, it's a lot of what I do. The cakes came about later, and you can see them if you take a look at my website or Facebook or Instagram. The cakes, I started doing those about a year in, I'd say, as I received requests for those. And in the past 6 months since the pandemic started, I have received a ton of requests for cakes. So you're seeing more and more cakes posted online all the time. So that's really my background. What I'd love to do is just start with some of the basics about the cookies themselves, the icing. I'm sort of assuming that people don't have much background on this, and so I want you to feel like you can be equipped to go do this yourself if you want to. It's really fun. It's a great activity to do at home with kids, or even just by yourself as a creative outlet. So I basically have like a very basic sugar cookie that I use. I'm going to share all the recipes with Hillary after this meeting, so you guys can have them if you'd like. But this is it's just there's nothing proprietary about this recipe. I like it because the cookies don't spread too much in the oven, which is really key when you want a shape to stay in place. One of the things that I always do with my cookie dough is chill it before I roll it out. So you will find some recipes that say they are no chill and you can go straight into rolling them out. I'm sure they're great. I just haven't used them. So I always put my cookie dough in the fridge or even the freezer for anywhere from an hour to several days until I need it. And then I take it out and I use it when it's cold. What I'm gonna do also today is show you a bunch of designs that all use this 3-inch circle cookie cutter. I feel like this is something that everyone has on hand. I have here in my house, I think hundreds of cookie cutters ad nauseum. Don't talk to my husband about it. But I love this. I love this circle. I use this circle all the time. I mean, I think I use it more than any other cutter. And you can see it has two sides. So it has this flat side and it has sort of this like ruffled edge. You can use it either way. I'm going to show you one design that uses both today in one cookie, which is kind of fun. These also come in a set. So when you buy these, if you buy them online, if you don't already have one, they'll come often in like a box with all different sizes, so you can use whatever you want. What else? This is called a Scribe tool. It is a very sharp toothpick, so you do not need one of these. You can absolutely use a toothpick. You're gonna see me use this throughout the demonstration. I use it really to push icing around the cookie, so I have a little more control of where things go and what they look like. I use it to smooth things out. Sometimes I'll use it to put like tiny dots. Like I'll actually take a bit of icing on the tip of this tool and place it exactly where I want it to go. If I'm doing like an eyeball or something like that, where I need like a little bit of a reflection. It's a good tool for that. But in general, I use this for every single job without fail. So you'll see this a lot. Like I said, you do not need to buy these. You can use a toothpick, it does the same thing. Okay, royal icing. So royal icing is the icing that you find on these cookies. It basically hardens when it hits the air. So the minute you put it on the cookie, it will start to harden. I mean, they do take a few hours to completely dry and be like stable where you're not gonna crack them, but they will start to harden pretty fast. Basically what this is, I'm gonna show it to you in a second, is it's very simple. It is powdered sugar, water, and meringue powder. Meringue powder is probably the only thing you won't have in your pantry, but you can get it online. You can also get it at the Jewel in Deerfield. I have no idea why, but they carry meringue powder in their little baking section. They have a really good baking section. So if you're ever looking for like specialty sprinkles or like maybe some weird offbeat baking items, that's a good place to check. It's not expensive. I use about a third cup per batch of royal icing. And what you can see when I use this is that when I make it, I can tip this over. It's so thick that even when I tip it, it doesn't move. It's just thick and smooth. And this is what it should look like. I basically put this in a mixer with a whisk attachment, all those ingredients. I whisk it for about 3 or 4 minutes all together, and this is what it comes out like. You can add flavorings to it. If you want some lemon or vanilla, you can add that too. A little bit of salt cuts the sweetness, but it's super thick. And this icing in this format is really good for flowers, anything that you want to hold its shape. So if you want icing that you're gonna put on the cookie and it's not gonna move at all, this is what you want. What I do though with icing is I add water to it until I get the consistency I want. So most cookies start with what's called a flood consistency. And I'm gonna show you that in the demonstration. But basically what that means is when you put it on the cookie, it is going to spread a little bit on its own. It's gonna smooth out on its own. I give it a little shake, or I smooth it out with my Scribe tool, but in general, it will do that by itself. And that just takes a bunch of sprays of water. One of the things that I use to really control the consistency that I want is this. This is my best friend sometimes. Instead of going to my sink and dumping a bunch of water into the royal icing, I literally give it 1 spray at a time. And you'll start to know, like if you have 6 scoops of royal icing, that you're gonna want 6 sprays of water to get it to the consistency you want. And that's just so you can control it. If you get it too thin, it will run off the edges of your cookie. It will get air bubbles in it. It just won't work quite as well. So consistency is super important. You're gonna see me use one other consistency today, which is what you call like a piping, or it's a little thicker. It's somewhere in between flood and that really thick starter consistency. It has enough water to heal so that it doesn't have any lumps or bumps, but it won't spread too much either. It's really good for writing, for letters, and for fine detail. So, are there any questions before I start? Otherwise, I'll dive in. Okay, so I'm gonna actually turn my phone away from my face right now. I'm gonna put it in a little tripod so you can see my counter and the cookies I'm working on. If ever there's a time where you can't see something, just let Hillary know so that she can tell me, but you're gonna see me twist my head in a really weird position as I put this in. Okay. Can you guys kind of see my countertop and hear me and everything?
We're good, Wendy.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna straighten this out a little bit here. All right, how's that? Can you see that cookie there? I'm gonna take no response as a yes.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We can see it.
Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is show you kind of this fun technique, which is called wet on wet. Basically what that means is that, I know it's a really weird name. Basically what it means is that you're not waiting for your royal icing to dry before you put any detail in it. I'm actually gonna do everything while it's wet. So I'm using just a white background. I'm just cutting the tip of my bag here a little bit. And I'm just gonna come through and outline this really carefully. And you can see I'm kind of like lifting up the icing and letting it drag through, which just gives me, again, a little more control on where it goes. And then I'm gonna fill this in. This is what flood consistency icing looks like. You can see that it kind of, as it leaves the bag and as I put more pressure on it, it just sort of spreads itself around, and it's gonna fill a lot of those empty spots that you're seeing. But what I'm gonna do is just come in here and use this Scribe tool to sort of close up those gaps and push the icing out to the edges. I do also use a little turntable sometimes, which is really helpful when you're filling lots and lots of cookies. It just makes things go a little faster, but it's absolutely not necessary. So I'm just spreading this out a little bit like that. I'm gonna fix that bump on the edge right there. Okay, and then once this is where we want it, like I said, I'm not even gonna wait for it to dry. I'm just gonna take two colors and I'm gonna make some flowers. So we're gonna make some purple roses. I'm gonna start with this slightly darker purple and just make a little U like that. And I'm just gonna do them sort of all over the cookie wherever I want a flower.
Wendy, this is all self-taught, is that correct?
Correct. This is all self-taught with lots of help from YouTube. There's so many tutorials out there. And then I'm taking a lighter color and just putting a little dot right in the middle, like that. And then I'm going to take the Scribe tool and I'm going to just come through and just give these a little circle around, and I'm going to kind of make some edges like the tips of a flower. And I'm going to do that on all of these. What's kind of neat about this is that you don't really even have to clean your Scribe tool between flowers, because it's okay to get that white in there. It kind of gives it the effect of a flower a little bit more. And you can see that the dark and light purple together sort of give it the dimension of a flower as well. So we're going to go around and do all of these.
Wendy, are you able to get a little bit closer to the cookie?
Let me see here. You know, I can't lower this. Let's see. That's just flatter. I don't know if I can get a whole lot closer. I'm sorry about that. You know what? As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to hold it up a little closer so you can see it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sorry about that. This arm only goes down so far. So I'm just sort of zhuzhing these around. That's my word. Like that. Then what I'm going to do is take this light green and on each flower, I'm just putting some dots like that. Then I'm going to go back to my Scribe tool. You can see how much I use it. And I'm just going to pull these dots out like little leaves. Just like that. And you can see it's just a really pretty, delicate cookie with purple roses or tulips or whatever you want them to be. And I often use this design as a bit of a background. And then I'll put something over it like initials or someone's name or anything that you want. It just makes a really pretty, lovely background, and it's so simple to create on your own. So that is the first design.
What would you say is your most popular cookie? Like, what's the one design that people keep coming back to over and over again?
That's a really good question. I don't, you know what? I don't think there's one thing that people like that everybody orders. I think that people very much want, you know, exactly what they want. They sort of have these custom ideas in mind. I think that I've done a lot of emojis. I get that request fairly frequently. Sometimes people have no idea what they want and they just want ideas from me. So, you know, I think everyone is really different on that.
Then do
They're
you
pretty
have a
unique.
favorite cookie that you like to make? Like, you said you like the circle. That's your favorite.
Well, I do
cookie.
like the circle cookie cutter. I do have some favorites. So a long time ago, probably a year and a half ago or something like that, I started to get requests for LOL dolls. And when I first got the request, I was like, how on earth am I going to do an LOL doll on a cookie? And of course I said yes, and to the job. And I did do a few at the very beginning that were okay. They weren't terrible. They weren't amazing, but they were okay. And I kind of had fun doing them. They were really time intensive and detailed. And I, you know, was trying really hard to do them. Over time, I have figured out different techniques for doing LOL dolls and things like that that have a lot of sort of detail and unique features. And I absolutely love the way they come out now. So the past 3 times that I've done LOL dolls, I've just been super happy with them, and I'm able to like mix up the colors and, you know, give some of them different hair and different features from the previous job. And so those have been really fun and kind of give me some creative freedom. And I think those are the jobs I love the most, is where I have a little bit of freedom to be creative. I think Some people have a really specific idea of what they want and they don't want anything different, and that's okay. And I do those jobs all the time. And other people are just kind of like, I want happy birthday cookies and a rainbow. And then I have some wiggle room to play, and I love those sorts of jobs. This is a favorite, I think, of people, actually, which is a donut. This is also the 3-inch cookie cutter. I used, to cut the circle in the middle, I actually used like just a piping tip, and I just pushed it down the center and pulled that piece of cookie dough out. It doesn't have to be that exact, but I just put a circle in the middle myself. And all I'm gonna do on this cookie is start by giving it like a little base layer so it has the color of a donut. So I'm just making that outline again. I'm gonna go around the middle. Fill this in. And I'm filling in this whole base. Again, this is meant to be sort of the base of the donut. All right, and then I'm just gonna take this and fill in these spots. Just like that. The other thing you can do if you don't have a scribe tool or don't want to use it, sometimes if you just give it a little shake, it will start to fill in by itself also. And it also totally smooths it out, so it's kind of a fun little trick. So normally what I would do is I would let this dry for at least like 30 minutes until this top crusts over. I did that this morning already on this one. So you can see what it looks like when it's dry, and it's nice and smooth and it doesn't crack or anything when I touch it with my fingers. It takes a little while. So I think I did this one this morning at about 8:30 or something. So it took a few hours to get here. And then what I'm gonna do is just take, let's make it a white donut. Well, that's not too fun, is it? Let's use this blue. Okay, so I'm just taking a little bit of this and I'm gonna give it some frosting.
Wendy, what do you use to color the frosting?
Oh, that's a great question.
White, correct?
What's that?
It starts off white.
It starts off white, but even with white, I add white. Even when it's plain, I add white if that's the color I want. I use AmeriColor gel food coloring. You always want to use a gel-based food coloring because anything with water will change the consistency of your icing, which you don't want. You want to have control over that. So the gel is really great, and it comes in a million colors, and then you can start to adjust colors based on what you want. So I always add, I like to use white when I'm creating white. It prevents colors from bleeding into one another. I'm just pushing this around to give it some shape here. And you know, you can use ivory to sort of soften colors down. You can mix whatever you want to get the colors you want. So I love to play around with that. Colors are definitely one of the things that are challenging because some of them, a little goes a long way. And with others of them, you need a ton of color. So you have to sort of get to know what the different colors do. Like the base of this donut is brown, but it's just a little bit of brown. And I often use a toothpick to add color rather than doing drops of color. Okay, so now I'm just gonna add some sprinkles. You can do these sprinkles. You could let this layer of blue dry and add sprinkles in royal icing. You could do it in royal icing wet on wet and add the colors that way, or you can use real sprinkles. I kind of like the real sprinkles. I like the colors and I like that that's what's actually used on donuts. So I find this sort of fun. And that's that. Donut cookie. Okay. So the next one we're gonna do, I'm trying to figure out what would be interesting and or more complicated. Let's do this one. This one is gonna be, again, standard 3-inch circle. I'm gonna make it a lemon. And what I'm gonna do is I'm using a yellow, and you can do this pretty much with any color. Like you could do, you know, lime, you can do whatever you want. I'm just gonna do kind of this half moon shape or sliver of a moon shape and fill this in like that. And I'm gonna push this around.
Now that making cookies is your business,
Yes.
do you still love it as much? I mean, do you get stressed out when you have to make the cookies, or do you find this all very meditative?
That's a great question. The answer is definitely both. I absolutely love doing it, and I love when I get designs that I've never done before, because there's just something fun about that, like, kind of challenge of it. So I love getting something I haven't done before. It does get stressful sometimes because when I was first starting, while we're talking, I'm going to do the next step, which is that I'm going to fill in a lighter part of the yellow, and you don't need to let this dry. You can just go ahead and do it. When I was first starting this little business, my brother gave me lots of direction on how I should do it. He was also an entrepreneur, and he would always say yes to everything. Just get your work out there so that people can see what you can do. And that's been my strategy. Say yes to everything. And sometimes that strategy can come back to bite me in the butt, where I have too many orders going out. And then there's a little bit of stress, but you know, everything gets done, and I try to like go through my schedule and see what exactly I need to get done every day to get the orders out on time. And that's what I do. Okay, so that looks like that. When that dries, I actually think I did that opposite. That's okay though. When that dries, we're gonna take this one, which I did earlier also, and I'm gonna use that thicker consistency white. It's just a slightly thicker than the flood. And like I said before, it's just gonna hold its shape. And I'm just gonna come around and outline here.
During your busiest time, how many dozen cookies do you think you make a week?
I don't know. So things have been really crazy. Like I had a crazy December. And you know, some weeks I'll have, literally hundreds of cookies going out. Other weeks I'll have 8 or 9 cakes plus, you know, just 80 cookies. So it really varies on what kind of orders are coming in or out. But I will tell you that with the pandemic, people placed a lot more orders. And I felt really fortunate that they were considering me for those orders. But yeah, it's been a busy time since March. I was shocked. I thought everything would get canceled, but it's actually been the opposite.
Cookies are always good to eat when you have to be locked in your house, right?
Right? Yep. Yes. Everybody loves a cookie. Okay. So this is just a really simple lemon, not a lime. And again, like such a simple, if you're just getting started with this, but do a bunch of them and in different colors and put them out on a platter, and they look really beautiful and really fun to make. So that is that design. I think next, let's do a football field. I think this is a favorite that people have, especially in the fall and winter. Although I hear the Big Ten is considering moving its football season, not just the Big Ten. College football may move to spring, so maybe it'll be in spring.
Yes, we just heard that.
Yes.
But we're not going to talk about football, right? Because we're kind of little rivalry here between the
Yeah, it's
school
okay.
you graduated from and the one my daughter goes to. So,
That's right. That's okay. That's okay.
do you?
I
Go
did
ahead.
get some heat for making Ohio State cookies, but that's okay if Kim is on the line. But that's all right. My Michigan friends understood.
When you flood the cookie, does it make a difference if you go around and around versus a zigzag motion?
No, it makes no difference, and you can do it however you're comfortable. And people do it all sorts of different ways. Yeah, totally doesn't matter. Again, I'm just sort of, this is going to be our football field right here. So once that dries, we're going to come in and do the top. My white is actually a little runny, so you're going to see me not quite fill the space. I just made this a little runnier than maybe I normally do by accident. So I'm just sort of keeping it in a little bit so that I can push it to where I want it to go. Otherwise, it's going to spread out and fall off the cookie. So I'm just pushing it out like this.
Do you still like to eat the cookies, or like you've been doing this long enough that you're over it?
I really don't eat these sugar cookies. Yeah, I don't have a huge taste for these. I do like the other stuff, and I can eat chocolate chip cookie dough all day long. So when there's an order for that, I'm pumped. Okay, so what I'm gonna do on this white while it's wet is I'm gonna add the football fans, and these are just nonpareils, and I'm using my fingers. I would not do this for a normal job, just so you know. Usually what I do is put these in a wider bowl where I can literally just plunge it in there and get all the sprinkles on at one time, or I use a spoon. And during COVID, I actually use gloves and a mask also, which I have taken off for this. So we're gonna put these all over here. These are gonna be our football fans. One of the things you can do is, if you know the school, I've done this before for the Chicago Bears, you can do all the colors for that school. So for the Bears, I did blue and orange and white. So all the fans were Chicago Bears fans. All right. And then to show you how crazy I can be, every now and then if there's like a spot like this, I'll just dip my Scribe one and get it a little sticky and take one sprinkle at a time and just fill that spot. But that's when you know I've sort of like gone off the deep end. Okay, so we'll stop that. And then what I'm gonna do down here on the bottom is I'm just gonna do the lines on the field. And I'm using that thicker consistency icing again. And what that does, like I said, it just gives me a little more control and it won't spread. And the consistency of your icing, I mean, I know this is gonna sound so silly, but it can actually like make or break whether your cookie comes out. Because if you're trying to do lettering or anything like that, and it's too runny, it will ruin like any good work you've already done on the cookie. And that's kind of sad. So it's good to take the time to make the consistencies that you want. Just gonna give it a little 50-yard line here. And that is that. Cute little football cookie. Okay. So this one as I'm sure you can tell, is going to be a beach ball. I've actually outlined this design first, and I use this. This is an edible ink marker. This is by Fadoodler is what they're called. There's lots of brands out there. I like these ones. They have a pretty thin tip, which I can get some detail, which is great. I have a few others as well that are a little thicker. I use edible ink often. It just really helps, one, with outlining any designs if that's needed, or even once the cookies are done and dry, you can actually draw right on the royal icing, which can be really nice if you're trying to get detail like eyelashes or anything like that, where there's like little dots or little spots, and you want to get that detail, or there's like a really custom logo that just needs specific lines. Markers can be good for that. So what we're gonna do on this one is start by filling in the white spaces first.
Wendy, someone's asking that about a pattern on top in a sheen, that they've received cookies that have a pattern on them and they also have a sheen. Do you know how that's done?
What do you mean a sheen? What does that mean?
Jennifer, can you unmute yourself, please, and explain a little bit more to Wendy what you're asking?
Sure. So the cookie I received, it had, when you turn the cookie a certain way, it had it was like a polka dotted sheen to it. And you could only see when you turned it a certain way. So I was just curious how that was done.
Yes. Yes. They airbrushed it. So they airbrushed it, and I use an airbrush too. And with the dots, it will look like a sheen, especially if you do like, if there's ever like silver on white, or white on anything will look kind of shimmery like a sheen. I suspect that's what you were seeing. So the good thing here is, you know, I have this pattern already drawn out. I know my icing is a little runnier than I want it to be, so I'm not quite filling in the space, but I can still then just come in and make it go exactly where I want it to go. And you won't be able to tell that it was runnier than I wanted it to be. And I'm gonna cover up the black lines with my icing so no one will know that I drew it first.
Does the weather affect how the icing comes out? Like, it's really humid today, so.
Yes, absolutely. So when it's really humid, these cookies will take a lot longer to dry. And that's definitely something to consider. The icing itself is the same, especially if you're in an air-conditioned space, but they do take longer to dry. So you want to give extra time for that. The other thing is, I find in the winter that they get crunchier. So like the icing itself, even once it's dry, is crunchier in the winter than in the summer. They dry and they're like a little bit softer. The icing, like the icing itself, not the cookie. But I always find that to be sort of interesting with the weather. I mean, the other thing that's like that are French macarons, which are so finicky and weather dependent that I barely even do them in the summer because they just don't work with humidity.
Someone is asking how to prevent air bubbles in your icing.
That's a really good question. So you can do a couple of things. One is when you're mixing in your colors and water to get the consistency you want, to mix relatively slowly so that you're not incorporating all of that air. The other thing you can do is, once your icing is done, it's at the consistency you want, you've added the color you want, and it's really where you want it to be, just let it sit in a container before you put it in a piping bag. Let it sit there for even like 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you'll see all the air bubbles rise to the top. And then before you bag it, you can just come in with a spoon and knock them all out, and that will really help as well. Okay, so now that this white is filled in, I'm sort of giving it a second to sit and harden just a drop. It doesn't need to harden a whole lot. I'm gonna come in and fill in the colors. And you'll see, like, when you let a cookie really sit and dry, you'll get nice defined lines between sections. If you don't give it as much time, they will sort of run together a little bit. Either way is usually okay. It just depends on the look that you're after. For any individual design, you can see here, these are gonna run together a little, but that's fine. It's not a deal breaker for a beach ball. I'm just gonna cover up this one black spot, and that gives us one section. Okay. I probably don't need those there anymore. So we're just gonna fill this in. You know, kind of one of the fun things about these sorts of designs too is that there's more that you can do with them. Like if you want to add, you know, flowers that sit on top, or a name or initials or a happy birthday message, like these all make, other than maybe the football field, they all make really cute little backdrops for that sort of thing, which is nice when you start to get into some of the more custom and themed orders. That can be a nice thing to have. All right, so just fill in this last little spot here.
What's your favorite thing about being, you know, your own boss, so to speak?
I do love being my own boss. Honestly, I think my favorite thing is that I get to decide what creatively I want to do and what do I think is worth trying and not worth trying. And I'm pretty open to trying new things. So I like that. I mean, I think that, you know, advertising is difficult. There's a lot, everyone is creative. Whether you're on the account side or the actual creative side or the media side, everyone has to be creative. But it's really hard to have your voice heard when there are so many creative opinions. And so I like having a little bit more of a voice in my own work.
Have you hit any obstacles being, you know, you're a women owned and run business? And so have you hit any obstacles?
Not as it relates to that. There are things that I'm working on that that will help me grow to be a little bit closer to what I want to be. So for example, I do struggle with storage of ingredients, of sugar cookie dough, regular cookie dough, cake layers, things like that. So I'm constantly looking for more storage options. And then I have been talking to a handful of retailers. And so I'm working on getting into a commercial kitchen. And those are the things that right now are biggest on my radar. I actually am hoping to hire a person sometime in the next few months who can help me with all of the prep work that needs to get done about 1 day a week. And that might mean anything from making batches of dough to making, you know, 3 vanilla cake batches where I have 9 layers just sort of sitting ready to go for the week. Things like that, that I just need to have on hand because right now I do all of that myself. Okay, here's our beach ball.
Beautiful.
Thanks, I know that's such a fun one. Okay, then I thought we could do, so this is a chocolate chip cookie. It's going to be a chocolate chip cookie. And you can see that what I did is I used my cutter, the same cutter. I used both sides. So I cut the circle out and then I flipped it over and I just used that sort of ruffled edge to get the bite out. And I took that right out. And this is another wet on wet design. It's super simple. And I did these recently for, I think it was a first birthday. And I put the birthday boy's name on all of these cookies. Some of them had bites out of them, some did not. And they came out so cute. So I'm just gonna fill it. This is the same brown that I used for my donuts. All the colors are made by hand, so I'm often looking for ways that I can overlap colors. Otherwise, making colors can take a long time when you have, like with those LOL dolls, you know, you've got multiple skin tones and hair colors and things going on that sometimes making the colors takes more time than anything else. So I'm just spreading this out so we can see our little grooves here with the bites. And then for my chips, I'm going to take a slightly darker brown. And
Once you mix the icing, sorry, Wendy.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Once you mix the icing, how long is it good? Like,
does it stay good for?
Yeah.
So I find it's really best to use it the day that you make it. It will start to separate a little bit from, like the color will start to separate, not the color, the water starts to separate a little bit from the icing as it sits out. That said, it is good. It is still good for several days. It just needs to be remixed. So if I have a color from a previous day that I know I can reuse, which often happens with like black and white that I use all the time, I will take, if I have a bunch of leftover white, I will take it and use it on the next job, but I always take it out of the bag, remix it. Maybe I add like a scoop more of royal icing just to change the consistency if I need to or freshen it up. But in general, it's still totally good to use for several days, even when it's been sitting out. You can really reuse icing pretty well. I know you can also refrigerate it. It just then needs to come out of the fridge and have plenty of time to get back to a temperature where you can use it. So this is our little chocolate chip cookie. Again, so simple, such an easy design, but I think they come out so cute. Okay, and then this one, I thought we would do a peace sign. And what I did here was I actually did this. You can do this with multiple colors. I'm just going to do it with 2, but you could do this with the whole rainbow. It would be really neat. I just sort of fill both halves of a cookie. So I'm doing this color up here, this sort of purpley color. And once that's filled in, on the bottom part, or the other half, I'm going to use sort of a complementary color. It's just this sort of like turquoisey blue. You know, these 2 colors would kind of go next to each other in a rainbow, and so they can really blend well together. And I only point that out because if you were using, for example, orange and green next to each other, when you blend them, they might just make a brown. Whereas these two colors, again, I'm just gonna spread this out, and I'm not so worried about the colors mixing because I kind of want that effect. I'm just gonna spread this out, and then.
Wendy, we had another question.
Sure.
Someone wanted to know how much time per day do you dedicate to baking, decorating, etc. Do you set aside a particular time of day for these activities?
That's a great question too. Yeah, I try to. I have two daughters. They are ages 9 and 13. And so while they don't necessarily want me involved in everything, they still need rides places. And obviously with e-learning and everything, there's definitely need for me to be very present during the day. So I usually wake up about 2 hours before my youngest daughter, and I spend that time in the kitchen pretty much every day. And that might mean I'm making cake layers, I'm rolling up cookie dough, I'm doing whatever I need to do to get ready for that day. And then while she's occupied, like right now she's doing a little backyard camp with 3 other girls. And while she's there, which it's only about 2.5 hours, I am on this call. So I sort of like squeeze things in based on their schedules and my schedule and everything that's going on. And obviously things are really different right now. You know, everyone is home. My husband is home working from home also. And so we have to find space and time for everybody. But I wouldn't say I dedicate specific times each day, but I do find pockets of time where I'm going to be working for the next hour, hour and a half. I'm just going to take this. I don't know what this is. It was in my utensil drawer. I use it all the time for baking. I don't know what it's really meant for, but I like it. I'm just going to spread these colors out down the middle. And I just used this the other day too to create a tie-dye cake. And I'm just sort of blending these colors down the middle like that. So they sort of mix in. And then I'm just going to give it a little shake to smooth it out. Like that. And then once this is dry, it looks sort of like that. And I'm going to take that white, sort of thicker consistency and just outline on top.
So your brother told you to accept every job. Just get yourself
He
out
did.
there and accept
did.
every job. But are there things that you wouldn't do? Are there any projects that you think you wouldn't?
Yes. So for example, I really do not work with fondant on cakes, especially. I don't get many requests for cookies with fondant. Every now and then I do. But on cakes, I don't work with fondant at all. I find it to be largely inedible, and which makes me sad to put on a cake. And so I really try to stick to buttercream. I will do maybe some fondant decoration if it's kind of the only way to get the look people want. But in general, if people send me a picture of a cake and it has like a whole fondant scheme, I will say no. It's just not my thing. And there's plenty of bakeries that do that and are really, really good at it. And so there's no need for me to do that. So I'm just kind of coming down the middle now.
If asked, would you ever think about competing on one of those baking shows on the Food Channel?
I would think about it, but I mean, I don't think I would do very well. I mean, the stuff that I make, I think that like the cookies and even some of the cakes, like certainly they have some the only word I can think of is shtick. Like they have some, like a Cookie Monster cake or like a Paw Patrol cookie, like their character cookies, things like that. There is some of that I do, but in general, my goal is usually to make things beautiful and delicious. And sometimes I feel like on those shows, it's more about like what it looks like using sweets to make something that looks like a fairy tale or whatever the challenge is, which I don't know that I'd be good at. This is a peace sign. Again, my white is just goofball right now. It's very runny. But what I love about this cookie is the background and how it has that sort of tie-dye effect with the peace sign overlay, which I think makes it really fun. I think that's about all of the designs that I had for you guys for today. Are there any other questions I can answer in our last few minutes?
I just asked for more questions, so we're waiting to see if any come through. But I have been the recipient. I've bought cookies. I've eaten your cookies. They're delicious. So if you haven't tried Wendy's cookies, definitely reach out to her. Here's her website. I'm putting it in the chat room again.
Oh, thanks.
You've got some of your good friends are on this call. They're all waving and
I got to see Liz for 1 second. I wanted to say hi.
So thank you so much, Wendy. Again, I recorded this, so if anybody missed it, it will be posted on our YouTube channel. It's been a pleasure. I know you say everybody's creative. I wouldn't say I was, but it's so fun to listen to how you're so fulfilled by doing this. And I think that's one of the most important things in having your own business and is really to be doing something that you love. And it's clear that you love doing it. I know that the JCC has enjoyed having cookies for various and different programs, and we're super appreciative of that. So wishing you continued success. Please, you know that we'll be in touch. Lots of us have kids going off to college that we'll be sending cookies to when we miss them desperately.
Like I said, I'm a Michigan grad, but it's okay.
You'll still make my OSU
do Badgers
cookies, right?
or Ohio State. It's fine. It's all good.
It's all good. And the cookies are delicious. So that's the most important thing. So thank you again, Wendy. We were so thrilled to have gotten this together and have you with us. Everyone says thank you. Great presentation. They really appreciated it. So be well.
Thank
you
guys.
Everybody for joining us. Please check out jccchicago.org for more great presentations coming up this week. We've got a couple more authors coming. And then we're going to start with some film stuff in the weeks to come. So thank you, everyone. Be well and take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.